Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our weekly segment in our video series, which now officially has a name. So, we are formally announcing that the name of our video series is going to be Teal Talk. So, each week we'll be introducing it as that rather than our nameless video series. Anyway, today we have some friends with us. So, I'm going to let everybody go around and introduce themselves. But for those of you who don't know, my name is Chris. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a counselor slash advocate at SARC.
And hello, once again, for those of you who may be tuning in for a second or third time. My name is Holly Savini. I am a counselor slash advocate also, and I also use she, her pronouns.
I am a brand new face, so even if you tuned in, you don't know me. My name is Katie. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the prevention and outreach specialist for SARC.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tyler. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am the master level intern for 2021 here at SARC. I'm going to be with SARC for a full year, and I'm excited to join and talk about these amazing topics.
Yeah, so today what we thought would be a kind of good way to start moving in our topics are, well, even to step back for a second, we wanted to begin a two-part, in a way, video series within our series. That's a weird way to put it, but we wanted to start talking about social media and how social media and the topics in social media impact survivors and sexual assault and sexual violence and how we talk about those topics. So within this year and within the past several years, we've seen a lot of talk online and within social media about conspiracy theories, particularly around the recent election, around human trafficking and sex trafficking. And there has been a variety of those conspiracy theories. I know that we've seen things online regarding QAnon, things regarding Wayfair, as well as Pizzagate and stuff like that. And so we really thought that today it would be important to bring those topics to our conversation and discuss the impacts to our survivors and to our sexual assault work, as well as to human trafficking as a whole. And that's what we wanted to kind of continue that conversation around.
Yeah, and thank you guys for creating a platform to be talking about this, because I know, especially on topics where there's a lot of emotions, right? Everybody hears child sex trafficking and our hearts leap out of our bodies because nobody wants this happening in our community. And it can be difficult to talk about things that we're all against while also reminding people that sometimes the way we try to counter it doesn't actually make things better for survivors. So this is one of those moments where so many people who may have encountered information, like Holly has outlined, have their hearts in the right place, but the direction of our action might not be doing what we think it is. So hopefully this gives us an opportunity to get us all on the same path towards a future without violence against children.
Certainly. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
Holly and I always do that to each other. It's just a regular occurrence. But I was going to say, just to kind of zoom out first, I want to talk a little bit about just the presence of social media. So there are so many social media platforms, especially where we saw a lot of these kind of conspiracy theories and stuff come to light. So we saw them on Facebook, we saw them on Instagram, we saw them on Twitter, TikTok. There are so many different ways that we receive these messages. And just to kind of really emphasize that, like, it was kind of being received from so many different sources, so many different places, and it was all we were seeing. So it became this kind of like total domination of the internet with like the hashtag Save the Children movement, which largely came out of the Wayfair conspiracy. And again, like Katie talked about, although our hearts are in a really good place and it is a mantra we can all get behind, like, yes, we do want to protect and save our children, but that misinformation can really hijack and distract from the real problems that exist and the causes that we're trying to fight.
And also, as a country, we're all coming out of this election period, this election time. And a lot of these topics, a lot of these things are really, really political charged. And we're not here to make a political statement. We're here to talk about what we can do for our community to prevent trafficking and also protect survivors as well, and make sure they're supported during this time when we're going through, we went through the election and now we're still in the pandemic a year later. So trying to figure out how best we can do that. And it's frankly not political.
Certainly. And when I think about all of this and we think about these movements that are going on, objectively speaking, this can be a really great thing. Like, human trafficking is now in a lens that it was not maybe seen before, because human trafficking is not a conspiracy. This is something that does happen, and it does happen on a scale that I don't know that people maybe recognized in the way that maybe they're seeing now. But what makes conspiracy so harmful is the way in which things can be sensationalized. And I think about things like the movie Taken, where there's this story of like sensationalization of this ring and out of state, out of country kind of transatlantic things, I don't know. Which, not to say that trafficking can be on a very large scale within rings with many people involved, with humans being trafficked across state, country, continents. But when we look at human trafficking and when we think about survivors' stories, we need to recognize that the children and the adults and the survivors that we serve, their stories are not a sensation. These stories aren't necessarily that movie Taken. We are looking at individuals whose loved ones may have trafficked them, whose loved ones may have coerced them into having sex with them for drugs or money, or convinced them to be in a relationship with them that turned into a really inappropriate, exploitive situation. And these aren't these sensationalized kind of trafficking situations that you see in the media, that are more realistic.
And that can be the danger of conspiracy theories like the ones we're seeing today. So much of what I'm seeing says that it's high-ranking politicians and celebrities and global billionaires who are engaging in sexual abuse of children and also trafficking those children to others. And the problem with us directing all of our attention to celebrities and politicians that we see on television or in the news is we're missing the human trafficking in our own backyard. Trafficking is a very local problem in a lot of ways. This can be absolutely crossing state lines or country lines, but a lot of times it might not even be crossing county lines at all. This looks like somebody's romantic partner, somebody's parent doing these things. And the more we hyper focus on celebrities who we don't know and don't have any control over, actually giving up the control we do have in our communities to hold each other accountable and look out for red flags in our own backyard.
So Holly talked a little bit about exploitation, and I think that that's something that's really important to talk about too, because when we're kind of sensationalizing these stories, these conspiracy theories, not only does it kind of cause this like civil unrest and like concern for or attention being directed towards an issue that overshadows one that's happening, again, like Katie said, in our own backyards, but I think it also exploits people's trauma, and it does it for a reason other than ending trafficking. So instead of like working before like the end of human trafficking, we're actually exploiting people's stories who have survived sex trafficking and human trafficking. And that's something that can be obviously super harmful to survivors. And it's really why we need to change the narrative. It's why we need to kind of shift away from those conspiracy theories and these kind of stories or things that are being put out there on social media that may not be true or have been debunked and discredited. So we want to talk a little bit about even how you can kind of navigate these conversations or these things as you see them pop up on social media, as you see them kind of pop up in your conversations with people, or for survivors that you might know who are really triggered by or feeling like this exploits their trauma. So I'm going to share this, and then everyone else can kind of contribute some ideas too. But I think one of those things is not really sharing them on your social media, not really feeding into that sensationalization and exploitation of trafficking survivors or of survivors in general. So really not continuing to spread those things.
Yeah, and we're sharing these articles and things and not knowing if they're actually accurate. And like we talked about, there could be a really good intention on this, like making people aware of, what's going on in regards to sex trafficking. That's great. We're all for bringing awareness to these issues in our community. But I think, something that we like to do at Stark is also talk about how can we prevent it? Like, what is the work that we can do? Not just like share a news article about something terrible that happened, but what are the ways we can actually prevent this in our own backyard, in our own community? And that's what we're here for as Stark, is to come up with those prevention items and, support survivors, one, and then also think about what are these things that we can actually do instead of just making it a sensation and causing this additional trauma for survivors.
And additionally, I think that something that we talk about a lot in our agency, and I kind of laugh because I think it's really relevant to a million areas in life, is sometimes there's not always a need to what I'm going to be calling reinvent the wheel. So when you want to get involved in helping a cause like human trafficking and reaching out and supporting survivors, that is so incredible and so amazing. But know that there are organizations and there are centers that want to also help that cause. And so reaching out to those organizations and seeing what you can do, because at the end of the day, they're probably the experts too. So they can provide you with that knowledge base that is probably credited and can also really help you to understand how to get involved in a way that's going to be super effective to those survivors.
Absolutely. And at Stark, we really do pride ourselves on not just pruning the branches of a problem, so to speak, but taking it up by the root. And that means really looking at it for what it is. So remembering, number one, human trafficking is not something that boogeymen we hear on Twitter are doing. It's people we know, people we trust, and that the causes of it are a lot more local in their solutions than they are global. We can look at who is vulnerable to being trafficked in the United States. And what we look at is it's young people who have different kind of vulnerabilities in their life already. So we're looking at young people who might have abuse in their home already that they consistently run away from and try to escape. In the process of running away, young people can find themselves being exploited. This can be LGBT youth who are kicked out of their homes or leaving abusive or unsafe situations, who don't have another place to go, and again, are exploited in exchange for things like shelter, things like a meal. This can be people who, I would say, who are labeled quote unquote bad kids. The second we call any young person a bad kid, we're shutting them off in the corner. We're saying whatever problems are in their life, they're to blame for, and we're cutting off our capacity to feel for them. So I always say look out for children who might carry that label, because just being overlooked by adults in that way creates vulnerability in itself. So starting to think about what can we do to address abuse in the home, between family members, between romantic partners. It might not be as glamorous seeming as what Liam Neeson does, but it's the thing that actually works. This can also be, what would it take for LGBT youth to be safe and accepted in our community? This can be looking at, do children of color have equitable opportunities for safe housing, for educational opportunities? Because we also see that racism in systems increases rates of trafficking as well. Who is vulnerable in our community, and what can we do to protect them?
Certainly. When we work to address
those two questions can prevent a lot more of this than anything we might share.
Sorry, Katie, I just cut you off. I think you froze, but you can certainly finish your thought.
I actually stopped talking about 2 minutes ago because I froze for a long time.
It's only going to add to you. I was just validating that when we work to address those high risk factors, those vulnerabilities, whether it's racism or access to housing or immigration status, or, you know, working with our youth that are at risk in our communities. When we work to, you know, really address those challenges that we face in our community and work to help those vulnerable populations and people, then we are going to lower the risk of human trafficking within our area. And I really wanted to kind of go back to what you were saying from the very beginning and link that again to this is an our area thing. In Pennsylvania, our occurrence of human trafficking is occurring. It's pretty high, you know, in areas like Reading and Lancaster and Harrisburg and Pittsburgh. We have human trafficking due to our roadways and our routes that happen. And so I think it's important to recognize, again, like I said earlier, that we are a high risk area. And so it's important to address our high risk factors in order to kind of take care of our home and our state and our people.
And I think you all bring up a really good point too about intersectionality and how important that is. Like seeing this as kind of a complex and intersecting issue and challenge that is not so like one layered, it's multi-layered. There's a lot of things that contribute to this and exacerbate it and allow it to continue. So again, like remembering that these aren't, I don't remember who takes them and taken. Is it like a stranger at the house or someone breaks into their house or something like that? That's not typically how that works. And again, it's not to say it doesn't happen or diminish those that has happened to, but it isn't the most common. It's your friends, your neighbors, people in your community, people's families, people's partners. And we really have to be vigilant for those things and work hard to prevent them in our community. And I think it's sometimes easier to think like this is a global issue and take that kind of zoom out approach, because then it doesn't feel so personal. It doesn't feel like this happens here, or this might happen to me or someone I know. And that's a lot more emotional. Like Katie said, that's really difficult to deal with. And it's sometimes a little bit easier for us to imagine like this happens other places in the world, but not here. And I think it's so important that we recognize it does happen here. And we do need to address these things in our own backyard. And hopefully that will transcend. If everybody did that, then globally all of those things would fall into place. And if everyone was working in their communities, we would see that on a larger scale. But it's really important as individuals, like Holly said, reach out to the centers in your area. If this is something that interests you, if you want to know more, if you want to be a volunteer, really work on prevention and receiving programming or training on that, reach out to your center. Everyone at SARC, like we are happy to help with that. We have people like Katie on staff who are awesome and have some really great programs, curriculums, and information to provide to individuals and to community agencies and spaces in order to really help with this.
I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day, your evening, wherever you're at, to learn more about this issue, whether this is your first step, whether you're like, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm into it and I'm learning, or this is like your 25th step and you've been in this work and doing this stuff. Wherever you are in the journey, just thank you for watching this video. And this counts. This is part of the work. This is part of the process of educating and learning more. So thanks.
And thank you all for coming to Teal Talks for maybe the first time or the third time. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the support. And like Tyler said, like just that kind of ongoing commitment to ending sexual violence. And we're really glad that you're here with us, just watching this video, wherever you're at, whenever it is. So thank you all.
And as always, if you have any suggestions for further videos or series you'd like to see, we'd love to hear your comments in the comments below. And if you have any input or suggestions or comments, questions regarding this video, we'd love to get some dialogue going in the comments below.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.